Yeah, there
Oh,
you go.
thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'd say just from my perspective, one of the limitations I see is markdown tables. Just they're not super friendly. And just from a tracking perspective, I have historically documented a lot of the compliance work that I do, either via like spreadsheets, so Excel, or even Google Sheets.
Hmm.
But I feel like I'm missing out on just some of the analytics I can get, like being able to filter and easily have a repository of, all right, here are the controls that are still in remediation, or like here are controls that have failed in our past audit, and we need to track through to remediation. So I feel like from an efficiency perspective, I lose time having to dig through separate control issues all the
Yeah.
time, or it's like creating another issue as a master issue to track, a bunch of child issues. So I was wondering what are you working on? Like, what are big features that you're working on from a compliance perspective, and trying to build into GitLab?
Sorry, one second.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a great question. So I think in that specific context, around managing audits, it's something that we want to achieve.
Mhm.
So there's a couple of things there. We have an MVC that I'm hopeful will make it to 12.10. If not, it should make 13.0. But it's the premise that leveraging project templates, you can create a new project and it'll be preloaded with the issues that map to the framework that you're trying to comply with. The first one we're launching is HIPAA. So I think there's 180 requirements in the HIPAA audit protocol, and so one issue each. The idea there is that um, the long-term vision is if you can create this project or just populate these issues in some way, and you can use labels or some of the features within GitLab to track that, then we could eventually report in the compliance dashboard to say, hey, of your 180, you're 80% complete because 120, 130, whatever issues are marked with the complete label. So there's some simple tracking stuff we can do there. Um, that's kind of the extent right now of what's planned for that type of context. There's a lot of other things that are happening in the compliance space, but it's primarily around more or better auditability and traceability with audit events, general reporting with the dashboard, exporting data from the audit events tables, from a list of users and memberships, that kind of thing. What I would really like to understand, though, is um, if you could talk to me about why linking to a spreadsheet is not ideal and what you envision as well, not what you envision. So tell me first about why the spreadsheet isn't ideal as far as like manage it out here, just reference it in an issue. And
Mhm.
let's start there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it comes down to, and maybe this is just like a lack of technical knowledge on my end with what we can do with GitLab. I could totally see linking out to a spreadsheet from an issue. I guess for my workflow, historically, it's nice to have everything consolidated in one place. So if I have like a workbook or a spreadsheet that I can open up and I can see every single control that is in scope for our audit requirements, and then being able to get metrics from that spreadsheet, looking at the various risks that we've mapped to controls or various compliance requirements. That would be great. It sounds like some of that would already be accomplished with this dashboard that you're talking about, that we'd be able to see. So I'd be interested in what can our team do in terms of, as you have these MVCs, um, can we participate? Is there anything we can do to participate and kind of look at what that dashboard looks like, what these like project templates look like? I guess like being the guinea pigs, so to speak, since we'll probably be using these features as they get built out into GitLab.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I can do real quick is I'll walk you through the interactive prototype that we've built and collect, kind of get you to give me some feedback on
Yeah.
that. And then I think as far as MVCs, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll be sure if you want to. I can ping you, or I can ping a list of folks. You just let me know on the issues as we start working on them, so that you
Yeah.
can chime in async and then hop on sync meetings as necessary. Um, Yeah, I think at this stage, your feedback is the most important. Eventually, it'll become things like user testing, probably helping to ideate next iterations and things of that
Yeah,
sort. So let me
absolutely.
jump in here. So the dashboard right now, the MVC that is already in production is basically this, right? And all it shows is the most recent merge request for all of the projects in a group. So the reason we're doing that, even though it's somewhat similar to an existing view that we have, the idea is that all of the compliance information that our customers need is already in GitLab, right? As you all know, it's a matter of aggregating all of that into one place so that you don't have the administrative overhead of going into, you know, multiple hundreds, dozens of projects, multiple groups with hundreds of projects to then find that data.
Right.
So trying to surface all of that very easily. So this is the current MVC, and what we're thinking in terms of longer term, well, I should say shorter, longer term, medium term, you know, 6 months out is achieving something like this, where this merge request view has evolved to show us some more key details. We'll probably add things like the pipeline results, excuse me, uh, things like maybe allowing customers to specify external systems they can call as part of the pipeline or as part of the merge request that we can surface here. And the intent with these filters is to be able to give them the ability to sort those views, because oftentimes, as you all know, the auditor will say, show me this specific subset of data, show it
Yep.
for the last week, show it for the last 6 months, show me random sampling over the last 6 months. And so being able to add that filtering in here, and then even ideally, a really great quality of life improvement, I think, is based on the filtering that you do, being able to kind of favorite or bookmark that criteria and like save it. So you can just one click pull that up for the next audit or the next auditor. Adding widgets like the license compliance so that you can see for your projects which ones have, you know, exemptions, pass, fail, or approvals on certain licenses. We're also wanting to incorporate project tagging so that you can tag projects as SOX, PCI, HIPAA, like whatever the framework is. A simple visual indicator for now as an MVC, I think, is valuable because it communicates to everyone like, oh, this project is going to have kind of a heightened sense of regulation behind it. And so it's not going to operate as other normal projects. But then we'll be able to filter by those. And same thing, if an auditor asks, okay, well, show me your projects that are PCI compliant. It's like, okay, here's these four. And then you can kind of delve into those as granularly as necessary. But then the most important for last in your context is this issues tab. And so the intent here is to make this much more verbose, right? So like this bar graph is really just symbolic in nature. We want to show visuals of some sort. Um, this would be assuming that we use that process I talked about earlier, where if you're labeling with our label system, we can then scrape that data to understand how can we filter based on that criteria. But then this could evolve further to say, well, if you have let's say that all were completed, for example, and so you had the 180 completed issues. Well, because those 180 are completed, we could add a widget that says, here are the 4 other compliance frameworks or regulations that you are 10, 13, 47% compliant with because of these requirements you met for HIPAA. So being able to surface insights like that about overlap and efficiency is certainly something I'd like to achieve as well.
This is awesome. This is super cool. Yeah, this is the type of information that I like. I know, like I was saying earlier, as part of my workflow, one thing right now that I'm finding is tough is if I want like an up-to-date status of where any control is at that we're currently working on, I have to navigate specifically to that issue. We do use labels, but I guess one of the issues that we face is that you're talking about being verbose here and the information presented in this dashboard. Our labels are very high level, so I can pull a consolidated list of, hey, these are the controls that are either still open or controls that we're blocked on. But if I want specific information, I still have to drill down a little bit more. But this is super cool. Wow.
Yeah, there's a couple other dynamics that I think have the potential to solve that latter problem, right, of needing granularity. So
Hmm.
we met with Mech to talk about this yesterday, and he shared that they have a GitLab bot that helps with test cases. Excuse me. And what happens is like I think an issue is created for each test case, and then I think the bot automatically appends data to those issues about that test case. So where that's relevant is we could leverage that precedent to say, okay, for these 180 audit issues, whenever certain actions are taken, let's say there's a merge request, that
Hmm.
bot should automatically document parts of that merge request activity into various different issues. So let's say 20 different issues require some evidence artifact. Maybe it's
Hmm.
the whole merge request package, which includes like pipelines, the linked issues, the results of the tests and scans, et cetera. Maybe that goes into 5 of those issues, but then subsets of that are only subsets of that are required for the other 10 or 15. You can then programmatically add that. But then what you
Right.
could
Like,
do, oh, go ahead.
oh no, sorry. So just making sure that I'm understanding correctly. So
Sure.
like a merge request that would be used to support like a change management process. And
Hmm.
let's say, like at GitLab, we have like 4 or 5 different change management controls that require that before a merge request is merged, that there's testing, there's an approval. So there's like a
Right.
bot that could grab that information from the MR as it happens, then populate those control issues accordingly to make sure that that information is consolidated at the control level.
That's the goal. Yes.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
super cool. That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, because even right, because like some requirements might say, I just want to see that you have at least one more set of eyes on approvals. It's
Hmm.
like, okay, well, I don't need the whole evidence artifact. I just need you to show me that for this merge request ID, here's the approvers that are listed as required, and here's the 1 or 2 people who approved it before it was pushed into production. And you don't necessarily need the pipelines, test results, et cetera, for that specific requirement, but
Right.
those artifacts are relevant for other issue or requirements. So in theory, what we could then do for the granularity piece is as that's being documented in the issue, we could figure out a way to tag that or programmatically add some static content that we could then scrape and use as an indicator to say, yes, this is, 10, 20, 30, 40% complete. So if we need for one requirement, show me a sample of 6 of these. Well, if there's only 5, we can infer that like, oh, there's only 5 comments on this thread. So then it's not 100%, it's 80%. Or we can look for a specific day. Like there's still a lot of unknowns about it, but like that's
Right.
kind of a general brainstorm.
That's awesome. I'm curious, as part of this, building out these different compliance feature sets,
Mhm.
have you thought anything about how GitLab is configured? I know for me, one of the things that I would love to see is being able to either scan what we would consider like in scope repositories or projects, and being able to quickly see if like the infrastructure team has configured their project to have like a protected branch, or if they've
Mhm.
configured the um, merge request author cannot be approver setting. And I don't know if that's something that you've thought about or have talked to anybody about when it comes to building this out. And maybe it's not really in scope for what we're trying to accomplish here, but just a thought.
Yeah, no, that's a great thought. And so I've given it some attention, though not in that direct context.
Hmm.
So I've had, I think, 2 customers I've spoken to with some element of we would like to, quote unquote, scan our projects to check for certain settings as being what
Hmm.
we want them to be. Um, the value of this particular MVC for labeling projects is we can achieve that in a fairly simplistic way, I think. So part of the motivation for reduce, so the original scope of this feature to like apply compliance controls to projects, that was kind of the
Hmm.
original idea. um, there were some limitations there, and so we pivoted to a much simpler MVC, which is, well, let's just label projects, let's let our customers identify these projects as a particular framework. And so one of the motivations there was that we have a setting among many, right, to enforce certain things. One of the settings
Right.
we released recently was disabling self-approval at the instance level. That was the title of the issue. But what it did was we added some of the merge request approval settings to the admin area. And if an admin enabled those, it made it inherited to all projects in the instance. And only an administrator could then change those settings at the project level to prevent maintainers or owners from disabling it to push code and then re-enabling it, right? Because that's a gap.
Mm-hmm.
But what this allows us to do is say, okay, we want to enable that setting, but only enforce it or apply it to projects that are labeled with a compliance framework, or we can select the specific compliance frameworks we want it to apply it to, which would probably be all of them, honestly.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but to your point, we could then also say, okay, scan only projects that are in scope, which are going to be labeled with a compliance framework, and give me some output to show what set. We could do it one of two ways, right? Like, here's a baseline to check against, give me a report against that. Or we can say, just show me, give me an export that says what settings are enabled for this project. Kind of like an entire data dump so that customers are empowered to do what they want with that, whereas the baseline is more defined and kind of like a common standard, and if there's any deviation from that, it's a separate iteration or something.
Right. No, this is super cool. This is exciting stuff. I'm new, obviously, to the side of building compliance feature sets into a product. Like, I've never worked in a product management type capacity. So this is awesome stuff. At least for me, I'd love to participate more as we continue to iterate and talk through the types of compliance features that we can build into the product. Um, and yeah, let me know if there's anything I can do in terms of like testing or getting into a test environment and adding some controls that I'm working on and try to work out the features that we have. And I can provide feedback based on what I'm seeing and the experience that I'm having working with these features. I'm happy to do that. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, more than happy to have you participate. There's a couple of opportunities. So um, there's the planning issue that I create every month, and then I have one that kind of looks forward a few milestones that you're always welcome to contribute to those and
Okay.
comment on those with whatever you want, whether it's, hey, this is really cool, or what about this other thing, just totally open forum.
Okay.
There's the compliance SIG, the special interest group, which has some customers who have opted into it. Jeff Burrows is part of it. That's
Okay.
another avenue where I post a monthly discussion on just, there's not a whole lot of participation. I'm hoping to change that, but that's another forum to just comment, because I'll just kind of very succinctly summarize, like, here's what we did last release, here's what the plans are for the next one, here's what I'm asking of you as the participants.
Okay.
Some other opportunities are, we have a weekly compliance sync meeting every Monday,
Okay.
somewhere between 8 and 9 a.m. It varies a bit. You're welcome to join that. Those are also recorded. There's a product designer meeting, which is usually also on Mondays, where I talk with my product designer, Daniel Mora, about what we're working on, and we kind of iterate and brainstorm and go through that design process. And then there's
Yeah.
also the G Managed Compliance Slack channel, which you're welcome to hop into, which you'll see the occasional Tam or Sal ask questions of us, some conversations that I'll post up about recordings or things that we're working on. And then I'm also open to any other suggestions you might have about how to introduce you to some things where you might be interested.
No, I think those avenues sound great. So I definitely I'm part of the G compliance Slack channel. So I see the conversations that are happening there. Is the compliance special interest group, is that also a Slack channel that I
That's
can
a
join?
private group within GitLab itself. So
Okay.
I can link you to it or just invite you to it.
Yeah. Feel free to shoot me a link, and then I can also solicit that to my team just to see if anybody else is interested in participating. But I mean, I figure at some point, ultimately, our group is going to be a heavy user of these features, so it'd just be really cool to kind of jump in and do a little bit of testing and to see what we have and be able to provide feedback. Since I know we talk about all the time, just internally in our team meetings, how we're pushing the limits of the features that are available in GitLab as we're trying to build out our compliance program here. So
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to invite you to it, and it might even help spur up some discussion. I think kind of the next attempt to get more participation would be to set up maybe a monthly call. What I might do is I'll probably share a recording I did with one of my front end engineers, Rob, and then maybe put this on GitLab Unfiltered and share that link as well into that SIG, just so they can see some of the discussions we're having. And I think the more activity that occurs in that SIG, the more motivated, hopefully, some of the customers will be to participate in that way.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'm curious, do you face a lot of pushback internally as you're trying to work out and like you're proposing features to build into our product to support compliance?
No, if anything, it's the exact opposite. There's a lot of expectation and support to get these features out very quickly, both
Like,
from our customers and from leadership internally. So I think there's generally a great unified front to build more of this out. And other PMs, just the natural state of things as the company grew before I joined, a lot of PMs took on compliance related features and
mhm,
requests kind of inherently. So there's even a great collaborative mindset, particularly between my group and like Nicole Schwartz
mhm,
over in the secure stage, and then I think she's composition analysis group, but then Jackie Michel in the release management group. So we have some discussions trying to collaborate on a few different things. So there's actually a really positive, encouraging, collaborative environment around this particular thing. Whereas I think I know where you're coming from. How like compliance is usually this like big headache. Nobody wants to
yeah,
deal with it. It's an expense. It's not a value add. And so
right.
there's doesn't seem to be that paradigm here from my perspective.
That's awesome. That's super, super good to hear. I know we're brushing up on time here. What I'll do is once this recording is finished, like finalizing on my computer, I will get it uploaded and I'll shoot a link over to you so you can have it. And then in the meantime, yeah, I would love an invite to the special interest group for compliance. I'd love to participate more.
Cool. Yeah. Just DM me on Slack with your GitLab handle, and then
Okay.
I'll just invite you real quick.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks so much, Matt. Super appreciate the convo.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for setting it up. Good
Yeah,
to
of
see you.
course. Talk
Take
to you
care.
soon. You
Bye
too.
bye.
Bye.